Thanks, I tried. We're used to seeing me in sweats.
All right. So welcome, ladies. I believe we are now live on YouTube. My name is Melissa. This is the Imagine This Women's Film Festival, and I'm really excited to introduce you for our Talent Reps panel today, What Actors Need to Know, which is a lot of things, I'm sure. This is Alexis Walker and Angie Lucania of Entertainment Lab, which is a management company by Coastal. You rep both actors and writers.
And directors.
And directors, all the people.
All the things.
It's actually been really cool to see the development of the company. Just for those of you who don't know, Entertainment Lab is a bi-coastal talent management and production company with locations in Beverly Hills and Manhattan. The company develops careers of established actors, writers, directors in film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover work, so all across the board. The roster has included Academy Award, Emmy Award, WGA Award, SAG Award, BAFTA, GLAAD, AFI, Sundance, South by Southwest, Kids' Choice Award, other festival award contenders, nominees, and winners. All-star peeps all around. And the company's literary department collaborates with other production houses on packaging and development of film and TV projects. So the company was formed in California, in Los Angeles in 2011. So it's 10 years old. I can do math.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to see the like development of the company. I was in LA for 10 years. I'm back in New York for a while. But I have, work and people on both coasts and people who you rep who are colleagues and friends. So it's like all one big happy family, which I love.
Yeah,
For sure, yeah.
So tell me, what I would love to know first is from each of you, I guess you're like a little bit of your backstories. What brought you to the desire to become a manager, and how did you arrive at working for Entertainment Lab?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think in high school, I wanted to work with actors some way. I thought maybe casting would be that route because that was the only thing I understood. I don't even think I understood how reps worked at that point. And so I went to film school, and then I ended up liking it. So I was like, I can stick with this. I was a screenwriting emphasis in the film major. And then I got an internship at a talent agency, like a small boutique agency. And that's sort of how I understood that, like agents and reps and stuff, they can work with actors. And I don't necessarily have to like keep a poker face, like in a casting room or something, and I can actually like start developing more relationships with actors personally than maybe I could on a casting side, just in the sense that like it's not about quantity so much as it is quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then I eventually landed as the executive assistant at Entertainment Lab. And then a year later I was promoted. And then I've been here for about, I think it'll be 6 years in November. So it kind of just grew from there. And I kind of got to see like an upward trajectory growth with Entertainment Lab too, once I was there, and seeing what, their goals were and things like that going forward, and growing obviously with our roster. And, obviously, as long as they keep coming through and we keep them on, we have clients that we've had for 10 years, and we've seen their growth as well. And that was always a goal of ours, is to kind of keep it as a family in a way, like how we do like your own siblings. Like, who's going to tell you honestly anything? It's like your brother, your sister is going to tell you, so for us, it's been important that, we kind of rep in the same way in terms of, just being honest of how this ride goes, because it's like this, so, but that's sort of how I got started. And it's just been a nice ride, and it feels very comfortable. And every day I'm learning something new, with, everyone's going through a different trajectory in their career here, so you can see where it can go and what times it's lower or higher or whatever, and just trying to accommodate at every stage.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what you're going to get every day. It's something different, something new to learn. I think that's super exciting about this job for sure. And my background, me and Angie, it's funny because we both kind of have like a performer background. So I started off thinking I wanted to be an actor. I went to school for acting. I grew up thinking acting was my bread and butter. And then I got my first acting job out of school and I was like, no, actually, it's not. It's not what I want to do at all. So I love the realm because I love storytelling. I love being around storytells. I love being around stories, and being able to be a part of them in some form or aspect. And so I wanted to stay in the realm of dealing with actors. So that's also why my first route was to think, oh, maybe it's casting. So I did a casting internship. I did a few other internships at theater companies, and then I ended up getting a job as a junior agent. And so that is kind of how I started to understand about repping actors and forming those relationships and being able to see, like Angie said, the trajectory of actors and how you can really root for someone when you have actors that you know and that you know how they work and you know everything about them. So it makes your job even more fun when it's like I really want my actors to succeed, not only because they're great actors, but because they're great people, and it's just a family. And so yeah.
I agree. And I forgot that, yeah, the internship I worked as a talent agency, I ended up being a junior agent there. And so that's how I started to really understand how the industry worked and the whole stages of, it's kind of like a machine in a way, like an assembly line, how to get through the breakdowns and the audition process and the pins and things like that. And that's sort of where I got to like kind of fake it till I make it, so to speak. I got to teach myself how everything works and act like I knew what I was doing when I didn't, and I actually still have clients from that time too now. So it's like, okay, I didn't completely screw it up,
I think we're all faking it till we make it. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
Especially in this industry, like widely,
Yeah. Cool. So Angie, you're in LA. Alexis, you're in New York. Is that correct? Cool. So I have so many questions. Angie, you're talking about kind of like understanding how the industry works, having junior agented and the mechanics of it. I think as actors, oftentimes we feel so in the dark, right? And it's so not linear. And so and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the kind of machine that you're talking about, that linear process, is very different on the rep end than like what it means to be an actor and grow in your career. Like that's not a straight line.
Right.
So I guess to that point, well, let's start at the beginning. Okay. So I have no experience. Let's say I'm fresh off in the bus in Manhattan or Los Angeles or whatever it is. I have dreams of working on sets or on Broadway. Where do I begin? How do I get a rep so that I can get the auditions?
Go ahead.
You go first.
Well, what's funny? I also think it's different, and correct me if I'm wrong, Angie, I think it's different from New York than it is for LA, because it also depends like which route you're trying to go. Like some actors, they only want to be in theater, or some actors, they only want to go for TV and film. And then certain projects get produced in New York and certain get produced in LA. So it's also like what your acting style is and which market you would thrive in more. So I think it's different depending on where that bus takes you, like you said. But I think the first thing, if you're just new to acting completely, is getting more familiar with acting. So either getting in classes or going to school or something like that, just so that you are familiar with how the industry works a little bit. Because I think some actors, when they're new, they think, I'm new and now I'm going to become a star. Like they don't realize that it's a lot of rejection. It's a lot of not hearing back. So I think learning about the industry for me, I think would be the first step.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I have like a little meme page I do, and like one of mine is like taking like that big step, like 12 steps on a like a hotel like staircase or something of like
Hmm.
the stages, like people coming in as newbie actors think, oh, I'll just get a rep immediately as I land, and I have no
Yeah.
credits, and
Yeah.
it's not like that. I wouldn't even think about getting a rep early on when you're first here, because you want to be able to get a sense of what the market's like, what the town is like, how actors function here in general. And I think community is number one in a lot of ways. It's very important
Yeah.
to kind of infiltrate yourself and find your niche with people and like-minded people. Because certainly everybody and their mom is an actor in LA, right? Or you at least know someone who is. And so, they're not all the same, and everybody's route to getting where they are isn't the same, both in like
Yeah.
the how and also the timeline, right? So like Alexa said, I'd say know where you want to go, but then also take the classes here. I don't care if you came out of an MFA program or you went to the London School of Acting or whatever, like you'll still have to kind of come into what the training is in each market, because it will kind of define how the various sets and projects here kind of work, same with like improv and doing commercial work. It's like those kind of go one and the same. You can't have one without the other in a way. So doing all of the very notable classes or just hearing what's new and what workshops you should go to, all that kind of stuff will start giving you a better idea of like how you can make your next steps and creating relationships, because it is a lot of networking and a lot of
Hmm.
who and things like that. So the idea that you can just step in and start pitching yourself to reps isn't really realistic. And then another thing I'd say in terms of actually starting to get rep is to start small, because
Yeah.
everyone gets their start generally with these amazing reps, agents, smaller managers that are willing to take on developmental clients. A lot of people think you can just start pitching yourself to top tens and you're just going to get your chance. And it's like, unless you're making real money, like they're not going to take a chance on you. And if there are nobodies on their roster, and I use that term loosely, nobodies, right? But like if they are, it's because they're usually their friends or something. Um, so in terms of starting small, that's important because that's a stepping stone. Everything's a stepping stone in a lot of ways here. So like with anything in any kind of career, you don't necessarily become like, on the floor on Wall Street anymore. You have to intern or be an assistant or whatever, and start building your knowledge and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's, and everyone I talk to says this, that there's no equation
Mhm.
to like booking whatever you're trying to book, booking a movie, booking a TV show. There's no like A plus B equals C.
Mhm.
So it's very much so just honing in on the skills you have and really just trying to be prepared when it is time for you to audition or do whatever. It's really making sure you have those skills and you are prepared for when that time comes. I think preparation is the biggest thing that we can stress.
yeah, and it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I know plenty of actors and other client stories where they did all the things wrong. You're right, they fell on their
Mhm.
face and then they came back and they're like, okay, well, I know better, so I can do better now, right?
Mhm.
And that's okay. That's some people's route in terms of living and stuff and experiencing and
Yeah.
approaching life differently. Is sometimes you go a route that doesn't work and then you have to reset and start over in a way, and that's okay too. It's not, at least you tried. That's how I always think. I'm like, if some people end up moving home and end up having a whole different life than this, like at least
Yeah.
you tried, right? Because at least you can say you did. And never, you had the courage to do it. So for me, it's no one's really a failure if at least you took a chance on yourself.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of humanity coming through in this conversation, which is so awesome. And I think so often, especially like on this side of the table, there's this weird power divide between the
Mm.
concept of like, I'm an actor and like you're a manager or an agent or that's a producer. And it's like that there's this weird like robotic thing that happens and like we're all human beings. And so we have to remember, like, even in communicating or pitching ourselves or like whatever it is, that, you know, this is a two-way conversation. And it can be very scary, I think, especially for actors who oftentimes feel very disempowered to come at communication in that way. Do you have any advice in that regard, in terms of even just how to approach you both?
I mean, I think it's for us too. I think, like Angie said, we are such a family, and we kind of, when we meet our actors for the first time, we always tell them, you can email us, you can call us, you can text us, however you want to reach out. So I think we do a pretty good job of telling them from the jump, from when we first meet them, that if you need to reach out to us, you can. At the end of the day, I think, you know, this industry, we're all about storytelling, we're all about art. And so with any art form, I think everyone's opinion matters. So the most I can say is don't feel bad, like reaching out and being honest. And I think communication also is what is a great thing about how we work too. Because I think when there's a lack of communication, that's where like problems kind of come up, because then it's like we're operating thinking one thing, where actors are operating thinking something, and then that's how the divide comes. And so when you have that open communication from the beginning, it's a lot easier to form a relationship and be able to submit you and be able to, you know, get you projects that you actually want to be on. So I think having that open communication is really important to have, no matter where you are, no matter what actor agent relationship is. You want to have that open communication early, so that you're not signing up to do something that you end up not liking, or, you know, problems end up arising down the line.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to open up with that as a rep and make that clear that you are accessible.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, you know, clients will think, oh, we're just so busy. Oh, I don't want to bother you. Here we are, blah, blah. And I'm here saying, listen, I'm showing you, these are the methods that are easiest to get a hold of me. Like for me personally, email is best because I check it more than anything else, even more than my phone during the week, you know.
Same.
But, you know, at this rate, it's sort of like, it's just more about making time than it is about, you know, the burden of taking up our time. You know, it's like we can make the time, but we need to know what you need in that, you know, like let's make a meeting for it. You know, I have plenty of clients that I have check-in Zooms with, and we're literally just going over like goals they have, and I'm just here to be like a sounding board for your manifestations, you know, like I love those are my favorite things, you know, because I'm like, good, because you're putting it out to the universe what you want, right? But like Alexis was saying, in terms of communication, how important it is, you know, this whole industry is collaborative. Like the whole reason your festival exists is because of collaboration. You know, it doesn't exist like in some one person and that's it, right? And same with the representation side of the industry. It is, you know, communication is the bedrock of collaboration, right? There is no collaboration without communication. And what we're doing is a collaboration. There is no manager or agent that is steering someone's career like to the T. You know what I mean? It takes the thought process of the actor and what their goals and what their vision is for their career for us to help, you know, help manifest it and move forward with them, and know what parts of our networking, you know, little Rolodex we need to reach out to get XYZ to happen for them. So communication is important in that way, as long as it's productive, I think, because I mean, there are moments where it's a lot of just like filling space because they're nervous and it's not productive, you know, like I don't need an essay every day, right? But, you know, general idea of like where you're moving towards, and giving us like new, let's say you did a short film with your friend on the weekend and you want to show them this is the kind of emphasis like I want to focus on in terms of characters I'm going for, vibes. All these things can kind of happen, and planting those seeds to us are helpful in that way too. But yeah.
That's great. I think, and that sparks another question. A lot of actors feel like, okay, once I get the agent or once I get the manager, like everything will be great, right? And then you're like, why aren't I getting auditions? Like, what's going on? And so I guess what are the steps once you sign someone, right? What does that collaboration look like? What is necessary for the actor to bring to the table? And then at what point, because sometimes it happens when, let's say, several months or maybe a year passes and like the activity isn't desirable for us and probably for you, most likely too. So how does an actor gauge like, maybe this isn't the right fit? Or is it just a lot of the times like the trends of the industry at this given time, and you just have to kind of hold on and keep doing what you're doing, and eventually everyone will rise concurrently?
Right. You want me to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'll let you Will's turn, but I've got some ideas here. Is that it's both. It's both, because I can't say that every manager and agent is great for any actor, because that's not true. We're not for every actor, and we wouldn't have a lot of our actors if they hadn't decided to leave a different rep. And no shade to anybody, because we believe in integrity, but I think it has a lot to do with how the actor thinks about their career, and recognizing that it's like a journey. It's not even a marathon at this point. I keep thinking it's like, oh yeah, it's not a race, it's a marathon. I'm like, it's not even a marathon. It's a journey. Like, it's not there. I can't even tell you if there's an end or not. We have clients who are 8 and 88, you know what I mean? So, and some of them start after retirement, so there is no ending in that sense. But in the marathon terminology, yeah, it's a process, and I think part of it is that we need to recognize that there are strengths with all different kinds of reps, and some actors gravitate to a certain type of rep because of how they communicate with them, or how they approach, submitting that client or whatever. And do numbers matter? I would say, yeah. Like, if you're in a rep position where you feel like you're doing everything right as an actor to kind of bring in more opportunities, like you're doing all the workshops, or you're in class and you're consistent, you have your community, or you have your headshots up to date, your reels up to date, all of the things, and it feels like nothing's happening on your rep side. There's you're not sure if they're even submitting you, which is kind of crazy to think, because I'm pretty sure all of them are. But sometimes it's your energy that may be the issue, or maybe it's theirs. It's hard to say. I think for us, we like to think that we're consistent in terms of getting opportunities where we can. But it's important to think about that on both sides. Like, is this me or is this them? But, if you just reach straight out to your reps and say, hey, where are my auditions? It's probably not going to go well, because it's like, it kind of puts all of it on us. And there's only so much we can do from our side, like, just feasibly speaking, like literally, like, if a lot of it's your networking, and then our contacts and relationships we've already created, and just obviously working hard and being consistent. So it's hard to say. It depends on the person, obviously, and some people are not in a good space, and so it kind of creates more bad energy happening in a way, So yeah, it's hard to not be biased in a way as an actor, and that's totally understandable. So that's why, again, communication is important, because you want to know where they stand, and then you find out, oh, maybe the rep only sees me like this, and oh, that's why I'm only getting submitted for very like specific things, and maybe that's not working for you. And those are kind of like, that's my only way of seeing it, because it's not just one answer, I guess.
Yeah, it really isn't. And that's why I think everyone has a different strategy. Like Angie said, some actors, they change their look completely and they say, okay, maybe that'll help. Or, a lot of actors, like we mentioned before, they have a network of friends or people that they know that they can reach out to kind of do something, maybe of something smaller, something not paid, just so that they're still acting on the side. So some people even use their networks in that capacity, or they self-submit for their own things, just so that, maybe if we didn't get an audition for something, but if they self-submit for themselves and they get an audition, like, it's so different. And I think with the pandemic, how that kind of changed everything. And some people are better at auditioning in person, where others are better at self-taping. So now it's just kind of like relearning how to be an actor in this new world of television and film and theater. And so it's like Angie said, it's so different for everyone. And it's just like which strategy works best for you and how we as reps can kind of work with which strategy is best for you.
Yeah, and research, and we're pushing that a lot more too. Is
Yeah.
like, what books are you reading? What classes haven't you taken yet? What, you know, things to start making the wheels turn for you and approach not just your acting in a different way, but how you approach your career in a different way. Because like you said, with the, you know, the pandemic, there were so many clients that were like freaking out because, oh my God, I used to book the room and now I have to, it's almost like it evened a playing field in a way, but it didn't, because we're all taping now. So it's more about how do you show your personality in a 3-second slate now, because that's the only time you're gonna go show it, you know, other than whatever you're bringing to your character, right? And understanding that, yeah, now you need like the really quality tech to kind of pull out the best popping tape and everything else, and it's not everybody's forte, you know, and figuring out how to run with the new trends, because this industry across the board is always evolving, you know, because it's one of the first places that we see society shifting is we see it in the media. And if we're the start of that, you know, the step of that, then we kind of have to run with how things move. Like when I started as a junior agent submitting, I think they had just really started putting submit all ethnicities when it was a very open role, or, you know, now they are using, you know, pronouns or identifying as in the, you know, using non-binary language in the descriptions, which is very new. So like showing how things are evolving, it affects the most minute little things, like us submitting on breakdowns and general society doesn't even know what that is, you know. So it really does change. Like it starts with the communication, the language, to start moving into a space that kind of runs with how society is evolving.
So that leads me to what's happening and us as an industry being at the forefront of this call for like major diversity and representation, which is awesome. And it's obviously right now like a confusing time, I think, for a lot of people. I think, you know, visual optics being something that's so important of the, you know, from this industry. I'm thinking of like me as a Jewish woman, for example, you know, there are certain frustrations depending on who you are, where you fall on the like LGBTQ spectrum, how you present. There are certain frustrations with like, I think where the industry is, what's acceptable for who plays what roles, you know, like how important is it for you to just represent your own identity? Does that come through? Does that matter? I'm curious how you're like navigating those conversations with your clients. You know, are you able to push the needle in certain areas, you know, from your perspective? And what can we do better collectively?
Alexis?
That's loaded. I think I think too, like you said, with it changing, like before, I feel like if something would come out on breakdown or whatever, and it would be for like a certain demographic, it wouldn't say, it'd just be like anyone could be anything, I think. And I think now a lot of times, like you said, it's more specific. So if it says, you know, we're looking for someone to play like a Filipino female, whereas before it would just say, we're looking for someone to play Asian. And they wouldn't tell you that the project is for, it ends up being Filipino until after, you know, you've auditioned and you get the script. So I think now there is starting to be a very specific, if you're looking for a very specific demographic, that's starting to be labeled sooner. So you see that as soon as the breakdown comes out, specifically what it's looking for. And then we give our actors kind of the leeway of asking them, are you comfortable playing this? Because we don't know the exact ethnicity of all of our actors. That's not something we ask. So if we get something that just says, you know, Asian, we'll give the audition to them and see if that's something they're comfortable with. Because I think actors too are getting more strict on the types of roles they will allow themselves to be in because of what you said. Like whereas before, you would see like a white male playing an Asian character where you wouldn't see that now. And I think a lot of our actors, even our white male actors today, they wouldn't accept that audition. So we're changing with the industry. And I think that's why it's easier for everyone in the end, because then one, you're getting people who actually identify with the story that's being told. And then two, that makes the whole project, I think, better in general because you're getting people that identify with the actual story that's being told. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I'd like to say, this is a hard one because it's sort of we're in a pendulum swing right now in terms of trying to make things more, equal in a way and more inclusive, obviously, and trying to be, I think the term I'd use right now that's going on is how can we make this story more authentic? Well, let's start with casting, and obviously the writer's room, having people who have actually experienced it, right? We do have all Black writers' rooms now and things happening in that sense. So we're trying to get to that point. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do because there's not enough, there could always be more. It is still white dominant, right? So I think part of that is, yes, we have to be still a little wide because we don't necessarily know if casting is going to get everything that they hope for, right? Like that maybe they can't find the most authentic Native American tribe, and obviously there's platforms where we're trying to create opportunities for marginalized communities to even be part of this, gatekeeping world in a way, right? And so that is part of the casting process problem anyway, is that's not necessarily like there's opportunities aren't really there. And that's why we do open casting calls, right? That's why they do like massive nationwide, what have you, because they really are trying to cast authentic. But for the day-to-day, episodic season, multicam, we don't have time to go that big, right? So there is we have to give leeway to our clients who is comfortable playing non-binary when they're not, who isn't, and who's okay, like, playing generalized Asian when they really only identify in the Southeast Asian, area. And it's the hard part for that is that, we don't necessarily want to be offensive, but at the same time, we have to be considerate of like what limits there are in casting for what they're going, to be able to cast at the end. Because at the end of the day, I think casting authenticity is important, but also hitting the mark for them and being the right actor for it, I think is even maybe more important. Obviously, I'm not a casting person, but I think that is important for them to provide whatever the producers end up gravitating to, right? So there is this process, like it's okay if clients cancel because listen, I'd feel more comfortable if someone who's LGBT identified would get this role over me. And so they'll pass on those things, and some don't. And it's not our place really to judge, as long as they're not being offensive in any way. It's more about what you're comfortable with. And I think we're seeing a lot of frustration with some clients too, because it's like maybe like our Indian clients are feeling like, oh, I'm tired of just playing this like stereotype or what have you, and I understand their frustration, and I understand, like I've talked to clients who are like frustrated with, oh, this like kind of whitewashing of this film, why is it not including of all these other aspects that come in that are a little more nuanced that we don't realize. And I keep telling them, it's a growing process. It's a growth spurt issue. I can't expect it to be fully formed tomorrow. And I think you can, as long as you are able to feel comfortable to voice that, that's as much as we can do at this point, like individually, but certainly collectively, starting something like your guys' film festival and adding all those voices and female voices on top of that, or female identifying, is all really important going in. So collaboratively speaking, community wise, us creating that platform and giving that voice will start changing the perspectives, and already has in the last 10 years, just in general. Like I think about watching like Dawson's Creek and being like, oh my God, there's like only 2 people of color in the whole series, like guest stars in anything, so understanding that, again, it's not gonna, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So
I agree, Angie, and I think too, acting is not a it's not a cheap profession. Like you're spending a lot of money on headshots, on your materials, on paying for profiles, on all of these things that I think, whereas before there weren't a lot of resources for actors, and I think now that's starting to change, where it gives them more resources for them, with like healthcare and things like that, whereas before that wasn't always the case. And so I think that's something else to consider. Like, you can't, it's not, I guess it's not a profession for someone who doesn't have the money to spend. And then also you're getting a lot of rejection. So you're spending a lot of money, and then it's like, is it paying off? That's, the question that actors always have. And so that's something else to consider. Like, it's hard mentally, it's hard financially. So having, I think, those resources for actors too is something that can always be improved too, to help them just in their physical lives, not necessarily just with acting specifically.
Yeah, and finding readers and things like that, like little things, it's like, that's
Exactly.
why
Or a
community
coach, or
is, community is important, and working with your group and finding people that will help in a way, and just try your best. You have to really love it. That's what I always tell clients or new actors. It's like, well, you better really love it, because you're going to get hit with a lot of BS in a lot of different ways that you didn't realize. And I mean, I guess that's why some people give up and go home, right? So and that's okay if you do, but it's just like, because you really have to be passionate.
I was talking to a colleague who's more like mid-career and a bit stuck lately. And I think this happens as a lot of actors kind of go through just phases of careers where, let's say you're a co-star actor, and then it's like, how do you break, like, how do you kind of like take the step up? Or you've done lots of work, maybe you recurred on a show and you're at kind of that level, and it's been like crickets chirping, So how does one, I feel like, activate whatever it is that next step is?
I'll give that to you, Angie.
Okay. My first thought when you're saying that was co-star hell is a state of mind. I've said this in my head. I've probably said this to a few clients, because I've heard clients say that about friends that have said that or whatever. And I think part of it is having to recognize yourself growing, and what would that look like? Because I think it's hard for clients who have been complacent for a long time, or actors who have been kind of okay, just kind of coasting wherever they're getting opportunities, because they're just so desperate for opportunities, because they're so few and far between, is that you kind of have to test your own confidence in a way, and feel courageous enough, believing you're worthy of it. Because I think, because there's so much rejection, there's a lot of, self-worth issues. And I mean, I think we all have that, just like living in America, but like, just feeling like, am I even able to do this? Am I going to be part of the party? Can I come into this space and feel like I belong? And I think a lot of it's more a mindset shift more than anything, because you kind of have to, once you've made that decision. I've seen clients do this, and I've seen them grow from, because like, we could submit them for everything, and if their mindset is such that they're focused on like, I'm looking forward to booking a guest star or what have you, then more guest star auditions will come in. And not every rep's going to think this way. I'm a magical thinking person, but you kind of have to believe in magic to even like succeed in this industry, I mean, do you really think like the big time stars like just had really low self-worth for like their entire career, and they just made it to where they were? It's like, no, they kind of had to believe that they're going to make it, and a lot of the clients I see that really do get to that place is they really believe in themselves. And so I think you have to focus and switch a little bit how you're looking at your career, and give yourself a better visual of what that will look like, so that you kind of have a sense of where to aim. If you just think about what you don't have and what things aren't working for you, then you're going to continue to be in that cycle of not having what you want in a way, and I don't want to say it's the secret law of attraction, like, oh, I'm just going to do it and think this way and I'm going to have it. It's like, no, you have to do the steps to be in resonance with what that would look like. And part of that means shifting your energy and how you approach things, and believing that you already have it in a way, even if you don't, because it's more about being in that joy space in order to like have gratitude and appreciate the opportunities you have. and then looking forward to the opportunities you will get now that you're in a space of knowing that, oh, it is possible to grow. It is possible to get out of this space and be getting juicier roles and bigger roles and things that will move your career forward on with these different credits to your resume. And, you know, but it's easier said than done, but that is a big part of it.
Yeah, and it's so much of being open and trusting the process, because we've had actors with no credits book a series regular, and we've had actors with a bunch of recurring guest stars never book a series regular. So it's kind of just trusting that process. And then also, like Angie said, changing your perspective, because there are some actors who can't even get co-stars, who are really trying just to build up their just to get, you know, 1 or 2 co-stars on their resume. So I don't think you can necessarily treat co-stars like as a bad thing, because you never know what that casting office like is thinking of you after casting you in a co-star, and maybe they'll see something else down the line that they're like, oh, that person who we cast as blah 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 would be great for this. So I guess you can't treat co-stars like they're bad things. And I understand the want to build and grow, because you are growing as an actor. But I guess just take everything as a learning lesson, stay open to something falling into place. But like we said, there's no like, this will get you here, this will get you here. If it was, we know it, and we tell all of our actors this are the steps you need to take to get to this point. But it's so much of who you know, being in the right space, how you fit into whatever project it is. So it's kind of hard to be like, you can have all the materials in the world and they can be tip top, and you still only book co-stars, but you never ever know what that can lead to.
Timing and luck, all of that is part of it. And there's plenty of clients who have booked co-stars that ended up turning into recurrings, and they, you know, it wasn't anticipated to be that way. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so I saw even just last week, you know, the breakdown never said recur or possibly recur, but it is now. So especially with pilots and stuff early on, it's like, you don't know what they're looking for. And that's where I tell actors, like, don't lose sight of what you personally have to offer, because you don't know what your personality and what your essence is going to bring to that set that makes them want to write for you more, or bring that character back because of what you delivered. So a big part of it is understanding like what your authentic self is, and also how you can deliver that, and don't necessarily focus too much on the gatekeepers who are limiting you from that. Like, you have to be able to be open to what the universe has to offer, because you don't know in that sense. And I think that's a big part of understanding how to move through this career is kind of surrendering to the unknown and not feeling like you have to control every aspect, because you don't have control of every aspect. You know, like I just had a few clients last week that were all kind of harping on the same issue of like, I don't have control of what they're thinking or how I can change their mind to give me this or what. And it's like, that's not your job. Like, your job is to just throw it all on the table in the audition room or on the audition tape, and then you just leave it for them. Because as long as you believe that you put out your best work and you're proud of it, that's all you can really do in that way, you know?
Yeah, it's such a journey, because for me personally, being fairly like an A student, right? Like a bit kind of type A and like go getter, creator, like very proactive, to come at that with a lot of grip and like, if I work hard, it will happen, you know, like to that space of surrender and like spending more energy, you know, really like coming to alignment with yourself. And like you said, really like having a vision and feeling into the expansion of that. Like, that's so much more the work than the, like, I need to do like 8,000 submissions a day. And like, that's never gonna connect in the way that we think. And it, you know, you start to like manipulate, or you know, it turns into this like manipulation, and then not showing up as your authentic self. You're hurting yourself in the process. You're making yourself fucking crazy. No good for anybody.
Exactly.
I think the pandemic was super helpful, and for many people, just like it forced us to stop and like literally surrender, because we couldn't do anything. And at least from my in my system, it was really like a reset, and I can't like muscle through like I used to.
Right.
And in that, I've seen evidence of something just come through, right? That was very aligned, like clearly meant for me when I was doing nothing, like I was vacationing with my parents, you know? So I think it's like, so much of our work and our responsibility is self-care, is, yes, community support, like love, health, joy, like how can we give ourselves, how can we play, how can we be in joy? That shit resonates. Yeah. So thanks for like saying that on your end, because I think it's really helpful, at least for me to hear. I'm sure for others as well.
Well, I love what you're saying, because that everything you just said is kind of a theme going on right now, just in the world, like what's happening in Iran and things, is understanding what that creative energy is, and what it is innately feminine, right? Like feminine doesn't push, like feminine is embracing it. It's like, a lot of the, the wounded masculine energy is very pushing and controlling and wanting to manipulate and all these things, which is kind of like our society in a way. It had to be functioning that way in order to become what it is and what it kind of represents, right? So I feel like a lot of that understanding is why it's so important for actors too, and the lockdown was important for a lot of our clients. I saw a lot of transformation in clients, and a lot of transformation in the industry. There was some, agents and managers who left the industry completely, actors that left the industry because they realized what was really authentic for them, and having that time to sit with it and realize, oh, this doesn't really resonate anymore. I have to move on and do XYZ, or I'm going to work into this space now. And having that time to be quiet with yourself and understand what that creative energy represents for you is really important for all people, but certainly for actors who need to constantly focus on how they can present their art in a way that works. You have to be able to work on yourself and understand yourself really well, better than most people,
Cool. So with pandemic, everything's on self-tape. I think it's shifted our capacity to be hired for projects in different areas, meaning like locations. You are a bi-coastal management company. What is the reality of an actor like actually being bi-coastal in this landscape? Is that just like a concept that isn't actually realistic? Can actors, like, New York actors, start to build relationship in LA if you're here, and vice versa? How's that all playing out on your end? Do you submit clients for stuff here and there? Is it very localized still? What's going on?
Yeah, and it's different too for every actor, because it's working bi-coastally too. Sometimes it's getting yourself there. So you're buying a plane ticket, you're finding a place to stay. It's kind of a lot coming out of your pocket. So it varies by actor, because some actors are okay doing that and some actors cannot afford that. But both offices, we submit on anything that gets released in that region. So even if something shoots in LA, but it's getting released in New York, we'll still submit them, because a lot of times, though it works somewhere else, they're still open to actors being anywhere. So I think, and that of course we talked about earlier, is the beauty of the self-tape world now. Now you can do that and get flown out places. But it all depends. I think for some roles, actors are more willing to work bi-coastally, of course, because it could be a life-changing role, whereas some it's not. So yes. It's definitely possible. I mean, it depends, I think.
Yeah, it also depends on the project and the casting office, like what their budget is to do that or not do that, or what they'll allow or not allow, because obviously the budget depends on like what they have the time to accommodate and things like that. As far as an individual actor, the only ones I know who can really work bi-coastally are people who have places that are theirs, like 2 apartments, like on each coast, or like family in one and you live in the other, or what have you. Like if it's financially, you can just fly yourself out, or maybe you have frequent flyer or you're a stewardess or something. I know I have clients that are work in that industry, and so it's easy for them to hop on, hop off, and maybe they have friends who they can use their, you know, address or what have you to be local hire.
Right.
That's a big part of it. I'd say that's it. If you have all of those benefits in your corner, then early on you can probably make that work. But I think it's
Yeah.
something that develops over time. Like if you're more of an accomplished actor and people recognize you or you have a name to you, like then it's more realistic that maybe the budget would actually accommodate just flying you out, right? But otherwise it's to each their own kind of.
Yeah.
Do they release in different markets? Yeah. And so we
Sometimes.
don't necessarily know if they have the budget to fly or not. It's great to have as a benefit if they're trying to end up hire locally, you know, or modified local. So it just depends on the project. It's hard to give a full answer to that because everyone who is local hire or in some capacity, it's because they have these kinds of options in their corner. You know, if you don't have any of those things, then it is very much just out of pocket. And hopefully, you know, generally speaking, they want an address though. That's probably the most important thing, is have an address that is, you know, that they can use to put in so that it's like legally, contractually like a local, right? So
tax stuff and all of that.
Yeah. And it has, you know, with time too, because some projects will be like, we need you here Friday or we need you here Monday. So are you able to get yourself there at a drop of a dime? And then sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, we want to test you on Friday and then wait a week and then have you come test again. Like, can you stay somewhere for 2 weeks and that be okay for X amount of time, and have it be like at the drop of the dime, you have to get up and leave? Will your work accommodate that? Your day job, things like that.
And that's a big part of it with COVID happening, is it's a little more shaky in some respects because a lot of the times, you know, a COVID issue will happen and they have to push the date. And then it's like, if you're acting as a local hire, but you're not really, like, then it's like, okay, well, now you have to cancel and reschedule the ticket. And then you have to extend your time here or what, you know what I mean? And that's when it gets a little more complicated. And that's true regardless of where your financial standing is or benefits you have to get access to wherever you want to go. It's like those things are out of your control, and it is about being able to be fluid enough and relaxed enough to just roll with it, you know?
Cool. Now, you as managers have your individual rosters, correct?
We do, and then we have actors we share also.
And then in that, I'm sure many actors also have agents. Some do, some don't. Do you feel like that is helpful to have like a more robust team? Not necessarily. Where do you stand on that? I know managers in general just have a closer relationship with clients, more hands-on. So at what point is it necessary to also bring on a theatrical agent, let's say, or a commercial agent or whatever it is?
So again, I think it's different for every actor. I know we work pretty well with agents, so I think that's what's good for us, is because all of our actors, we know who their agents are. We kind of, every time an actor gets an audition, we're also in communication with their agent. So some actors feel like, so for me personally in New York, if we only have a New York actor, some actors will bring on Southeast agents or like agents that can get them auditions in markets that we don't necessarily submit them in. So that, I think, you know, is helpful for some actors. But again, that's also the local hire situation. Like, do you have a house in the Southeast where you can be getting there because your agents are submitting you for things like that? So yeah, I mean, we work well with agents. I do think it's helpful for some actors because, again, they're being submitted in multiple regions. We always do like to have an agent, because even if you're just getting submitted in New York, we're submitting you in New York and they're also submitting you in New York. So it's rises the chance of getting opportunities. Your face is getting out there more ways than one. So I do think it's great to have an agent. We do have some actors who don't have agents, they still book. So yeah, I personally think it's good to have an agent, especially because they can handle bookings and they're good with money. And even if you want just like a second opinion on something, it's good to have a manager and an agent. So
yeah, again, it's a collaboration. It's not all just in one corner, and it is helpful because, again, what Alexa said, it's like probability factor, it's like if we're all submitting on the same breakdowns, then, maybe we submit you on one role on the breakdown, and I've seen multiple people get auditions for the same breakdown because,
Two
the
separate
agent got
roles.
one role and then we got the other. So in that case, like, that's in your favor. And, it's just helpful to have a team member to take on the work of it though, too, so it's not necessarily all on just one. We can give, like, yeah, are we more hands-on? Yeah, is the manager being able to coordinate and organize everything amongst the other agents if they're different, local market agents and things, and just make everything cohesive. And so that is helpful for us. We would always encourage that. We totally understand if you don't want one. Certainly, as a developmental actor, you don't necessarily need one really starting out. But if you are starting to get momentum, then it's helpful to have someone come on board and start, making the most of those opportunities for you.
Cool. What is the best way for actors to get on your radars?
Email, I think. They email us your headshot, your resume. If you have an IMDb link, you can throw that in there. We love IMDb. But I think that's the easiest way to get on our radar. That doesn't necessarily mean if you email us, we're going to sign you, of course. But I think when you email us, we do see it. So yeah, I think so. A lot of times too, like agents, they'll reach out to us for their actors. So some agents do that. But I think email is probably the quickest way to get for us to see.
Yeah, headshot, resume, reel, make it really easy to look at.
Mhm.
Bullet points, don't send a story. Like, we don't have time to read a life story, no shade, but like, I just, it's the thing is, like, we do get so many a day that we can only really, entertain a couple, maybe, so it's I mean, like, it's hard. That's the hard part about being like a gatekeeper of such, as like, well, everyone else has gatekeepers above us too, you know what I mean? Like, we're working in a gatekeeper system in a way. And so, we may not need someone that looks like you on a roster right now, or we're, maybe we're not taking anyone right now, or, especially when we pitch to agents, we hear all of that kind of stuff. Is like, oh, they kind of compete with someone on the roster directly. We don't necessarily need that, because we're all just trying to, like, diversify the roster as much as we can, just with what we think is working, what the market is looking for right now. And there's a lot of different factors, but yeah, email for sure is helpful because that's what we check up the most. But yeah.
Cool. So I think we have like maybe a minute to wrap up. First, I just want to say thank you so much for this brilliant conversation. It's such a delight. And just like to be in a Zoom room with like gorgeous, intelligent, passionate women is awesome. Is there any final like tidbit of advice or anything that you would want to share with the filmmaking community here as we did our adieus?
Yeah, and I think it's something you both actually talked about, which was resonating with me while you were talking about it, which is staying, I think, authentic and not trying to change yourself because you think that's what someone else will like. And then you get in this realm of, I'm going to do this audition because this office seems to cast actors who act like this, versus just staying your authentic self and letting the chips fall where they may. I think that's advice anybody could take, and that's what resonated with me from what you both were talking about on this call.
Yeah, I would just say, keep being a student, keep believing yourself, ask questions, be open to criticism, and then also be open to educating yourself and going, if you feel like you're not a big comedy person, but you feel like you're losing out on stuff, then go take an improv class, or, challenge yourself and, like, do a stand-up workshop, like, just be open to what comes your way, because you don't necessarily always know what that will be opening doors to. And I think and that's true of meeting certain people or being invited to, a screening or to what, you never know. And so it's like, be like grateful for what's options are coming to you, and roll with it and see and be open to what that will look like.
Yeah, and be prepared for sure.
Mm.
Be off book when
Yeah.
you're auditioning, be off book. Make sure you have your
Yeah.
self-tape set up correctly.
Yeah. Check
Make
your
sure
emails on
audio is
time.
working. Yeah, exactly. It's true. So many people miss opportunities just from not being prepared. Like your audio doesn't work, but the audition was great. But casting doesn't have time to email you back and say, "Hey, we couldn't hear you." So
Mhm.
yeah, just making sure that you're doing everything you can so that everything else is just out of your
Yeah.
control.
All I's dotted, all T's crossed, just
Hmm.
be prepared, and maybe try and relax through that.
Right.
Right.
But with joy.
But with
Yeah.
joy, guys, like it's fine if you
Impossible.
don't, but it's, just come back to center, clean your room. I don't know,
Yeah, yeah, right.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Brilliant. So wise. Thank you to our participants. And I hope that you got a lot out of this conversation. I certainly did. I believe Patrice will come out to say, hey, as we kind of wrap this up. Calling on Patrice.